Things are heating up for Toyota here in North America. Look at this recent announcement. Toyota charges up investment and jobs in U.S. manufacturing. Now, this is regarding their Indiana plant. In Indiana, they actually have two plants. Their West plant, I think, makes the TX and Grand Highlander, and their East plant makes a Sienna and normal Highlander. But this $1.4 billion investment brings production of an all-new BEV. And I think this is going to be on the East plant assembly line. It's going to add 340 new sustainable jobs in the US. They will prepare for an assembly of an all-new 3-row battery electric SUV in the US. What? Well, hold on. Let's pump the brakes a little bit. We need to go back in time. May 31st, 2023. So like a year ago at this point, roughly. Toyota ramps up commitment to electrification with U.S. battery production or BEV vehicle production and additional plant investment. And there in Kentucky, they have an all-new 3-row BEV in 2025. So you're going to have a 3-row BEV made in Kentucky. You will have a 3-row BEV now made in Indiana as well. We have no announcement on an EV 2-row, regardless if it's a sedan or crossover. We have two different assembly plants for 3-row EVs. Now, there's not a lot of competition for 3-row EVs right now here in North America. That will change very, very quickly. But is there that big of a demand? I think there's a larger demand for 3-row plug-in hybrids from Toyota, but that's a different story for a different day. All right. And we'll talk a little bit about plug-in hybrids today too, because things are spicing up there as well. New SUV will use batteries from the Toyota North Carolina plant, which begins battery production in 2025. Now, keep in mind, Toyota also has an agreement with LG for pouch-style cells to supply BEVs. Now, what's also interesting, at the time of this announcement, just a year ago, look at this. Production at the Liberty plant is slated to begin in 2025 with 6 battery production lines, 4 for hybrids and 2 for battery electric vehicles. Now, if I go over to the Toyota's North Carolina battery plant right now, they've updated it. It will come online in 2025. Now, at some point, it will have up to 14 production lines. At launch, I don't know what it will be. We're going from 6 production lines now to more than double to 14. 4 are still dedicated for hybrids. That's it. They have not increased their projection for hybrid batteries, at least in theory, based off the line volume. But they went from 2 lines to support EVs now to 10. So it's a 5-time increase in batteries for battery electric vehicles. But here's the asterisk. You also have plug-in hybrid batteries coming from those 10 production lines. All right. So BEVs, plug-in hybrids, and hybrids are all going to massively jump by several times starting in 2025. Now back to the article with this Indiana announcement for a 3-row BEV. They say this investment comes on the heels of the billions they're pouring into Kentucky for production of a separate all-new 3-row battery electric vehicle. To me, that says not the same vehicle whatsoever. You could say, well, you know, Kirk, maybe the TZ will be made in Indiana, and then they will be making just the BZ4X in Kentucky. But that can't be. Akio Toyoda in 2021, when he was still the CEO, showed this vehicle. And this is what we assumed would be the BZ5X. And I believe this is a vehicle that will be made in Kentucky. Now, he also showed another vehicle, this guy, which is like a carbon copy of this vehicle, right? Just with Lexus styling. We know that the Grand Highlander and the TX are currently built on essentially the same assembly line in the West Plant in Indiana. All right. There's no way Lexus would have an identical BEV compared to this guy with the same door panels, the same side fenders. It's pretty much the same vehicle. It'll have maybe different motors and higher power outputs on the Lexus and maybe more fancy features. But there's no way that they would separate the production of those two models. It just doesn't make sense from a cost perspective. So this vehicle, whatever they're going to be called. I'm pretty sure this will be the TZ. This might not be called the BZ5X. We'll dive into this here in a little bit. And there's a possibility of a Subaru 3-row SUV being built in Kentucky as well, alongside of this vehicle in the Lexus model. So I think this is the original. This is the first 3-row SUV that was planned for North America. The Indiana one, now we have to get into some extra sleuthing here. We're going to go over to Larry Valiquette's article, this over at Automotive News. Larry's awesome. I always try to talk to him when I'm at Toyota events because he covers, I believe, Asian autos for automotive news for the North American market. So I see him quite often at these events. I had breakfast with him in Hawaii the morning of, I think, the Tacoma reveal. And this time around, we had the same time slot for Forerunner pictures coverage, that sort of thing. So anyways, Larry's got some really juicy info for us today that we can further sink our teeth into and to help unravel this mystery. He says the details of the investment signal that it may be an alteration on one of the plant's existing nameplates instead of an all-new vehicle, right? All TMMI, well, in this article, it just says of an all-new BEV. It doesn't say like an all-new nameplate or anything like that. It just means an all-new BEV, all right? So it's pretty vague. But Larry is saying that it could use a nameplate that we are familiar with or is currently in use. And he was able to find out from a spokesperson that it will be a Toyota brand vehicle. That rules out the TZ, right? Then I already kind of ruled that out because it has to be made. It has to be made alongside the BZ5X or whatever that vehicle will be. But he says it will be a Toyota brand vehicle that is different and larger than the 3-row electric crossover that's beginning production in Kentucky. So it will be different and bigger than this, and yet it is still a crossover, a 3-row crossover. Do we have any other vehicle Toyota has shared with us that it is different and larger? And the answer is maybe. The answer is maybe. Here is an EV that I detailed for you guys when I was in Japan with David Chow at the Japan Mobility Show, and they revealed this thing. This is the Land Cruiser SE, a fully battery electric Land Cruiser. And it kind of has, Range Rover vibes to it. And I totally get that, right? Do I think that this could be built in Indiana? Absolutely not. I don't think this is actually bigger. It's roughly the same size. And it just wouldn't make sense. Land Cruiser will always be built. It's hard to say, right? Because the new Mini Cruiser, they're calling that the Land Cruiser FJ. But I feel like larger Land Cruisers will always be built in Japan. That Land Cruiser FJ, that mini one, could be built on the IMV0 platform, which could be built in Thailand or Indonesia or something. So anyways, this vehicle right here would not be built in Indiana. And that's the only other 3-row EV that I'm aware of that Toyota has detailed that has a familiar nameplate. Now, Larry says a Kentucky-built vehicle has been identified as the BZ5X. I don't know, because if we go over to CarBuzz, they dumped a bunch of information. I don't know how much. I think a lot of it is accurate here. But if we go down to the Highlander going fully electric and Grand Highlander to retain ICE and hybrid powertrains, that's a possibility. But the Highlander here would have to be larger than the Grand Highlander. And so this wouldn't make sense to be made in the Indiana plant as a fully electric because it's supposed to be larger than the one being made in Kentucky. But they can name the BZ5X or whatever it's going to be called this vehicle. This could be actually called just the Highlander. We know how much of a fail Toyota's BZ nomenclature is here in the United States. It's literally the butt end of jokes all the time. Busy Forks, or it sounds like a copy machine, or just whatever the heck you want to call the BZ nameplate. It's a mess. So I think it'd be smart for them to call this the Highlander and just call it the Highlander EV. Simple as that. The Grand Highlander will live on with internal combustion engines, although electrified and maybe non-electrified, in the Indiana plant. Okay, so we'll just call this the Highlander slash BZ5X. It could be either or. Now that vehicle in Kentucky, the BZ5X Highlander, is starting production in 2025. The Indiana-built vehicle is scheduled to go into production the following year in 2026. Guys, this is happening fast. So we will have an announcement for the Highlander EV, the BZ5X, by the end of this year, more than likely. Maybe at the LA Auto Show, where they could also reveal the new RAV4. Man, that would be a heck of a show. They're just going to break the LA Auto Show at that point with those announcements. But this vehicle could be revealed the following year at the LA Auto Show or something like that if production is going in 2026. Oh, and it is confirmed here the EV will be built in the facility's East plant, which builds the Highlander and the Sienna. This is a huge twist here. Tom Hollander, president of manufacturing in Indiana, said Thursday that the new vehicle will be chassis based and will be built with existing Toyota vehicles on that line, as opposed to a more widely adopted skateboard-based EV, where the battery pack becomes a structural element of the body. We know recently with Honda's $11 billion announcement for Canada that they're doing pretty much all structural elements of the body, their all new platform. This is using an existing platform to make this really large 3-row SUV. This is where the puzzle piece is starting to make sense. Okay, so it's in the East plant. It will be structurally based off of the TNGA-K platform, you could say, or what Toyota would call the eTNGA platform. And if the Highlander just moves a production to the Kentucky plant as a full EV, that leaves a slot here for this vehicle to start production as well. Now, it can't be a Sienna, but they could use the wide base of the Sienna to put a huge battery in. The wheelbase of the Sienna is massive, 120.5 inches. That's plenty large enough for a 3-row BEV. If we look up the wheelbase of the Kia EV9, right, it's within parameter, all right? So Toyota could put a 100 kilowatt hour battery or whatever in this super huge 3-row SUV. Larry goes on to say that it may indicate that one of the existing vehicles on the line is being converted to a full EV, but that seems to be partly true. The Highlander seemingly is going to be the BZ5X fully EV, but at the Kentucky plant. Would they take the Grand Highlander platform on the West plant, bring it to the East plant, and just put a huge battery in it? I think it's going to be a little bit more intricate than that. Grand Highlander wheelbase is 116.1 inches. Could they shove a 100 kilowatt hour battery into something like this? If we look at the Volvo EX90, it has a slightly longer wheelbase than the Grand Highlander at 117.5 inches. Maybe they can get their battery density up where they can stuff 100 kilowatt hours or whatever into the Grand Highlander's undercarriage. They're not increasing total production here of this vehicle, but if Highlander goes to Kentucky, we can extrapolate actually from current Highlander sales. It has diminished quite a bit with the introduction of the Grand Highlander. We can kind of estimate what these sales would be for this battery electric vehicle. So 32,000 so far. I think Larry is saying in the first quarter. So just multiply that by 4. We're talking over 120,000 EVs, 3-row EVs, these massive behemoths, which are going to weigh like 6,000 pounds. I can't talk about it until May 2nd, but I just drove the Acura ZDX and that thing weighs 6,000 pounds in the Type S. It's insanely heavy, but this thing will weigh anywhere from 5,000 to 6,000 pounds and they could be producing over 6 figures. What could also spice this up is that if Sienna goes to Japan for production, just a rumor, then they could, double that production capacity of this electric Highlander to maybe 200,000 units. But I'm going to go back to this Car Buzz article. Toyota's Dave Chris said we're going to expand plug-in availability throughout the lineup fairly quickly. The writing's on the wall when you have 10 battery lines coming out of North Carolina, and those 10 are split between plug-in hybrid batteries as well as battery electric vehicle batteries. Toyota sources said the next models to get PHEV options will be the Sequoia and Tundra and Tacoma pickups. I find that hard to believe, but I guess it's possible. And I covered recently that Toyota has been developing plug-in hybrids for the Tacoma. So maybe it is the next wave. Their F platform vehicles are the next wave. But the thing is, like, they are already really expensive. What is a plug-in hybrid Sequoia going to be? $100,000? Same thing for a Tundra, $100K. Tacoma, I mean, it's already expensive, the new Tacoma. So what is that going to be? $75,000? I just want plug-in hybrids to come to more family options. But here I am waiting for a plug-in hybrid Sienna, and they're not doing it. There's no plug-in hybrid Highlander or Grand Highlander. There is the TX, but that's 80 grand. Dang it. Dave Chris says, I think you're going to see better BZs in the future and other BEVs. Okay, so that means I'll have BEVs that are not the BZ nomenclature, which is great, but better BZs, no one wants more BZs. They just want more familiar nameplates. Toyota, don't throw away the decades of name recognition with the Highlander and the Camry and all that and replace it with BZ. That would be an absolute corporate meltdown, marketing nightmare. It would be disgusting to throw all the history, all the tradition, all their brand recognition for BZ. And so Toyota has these two different 3-row battery electric vehicles coming out in the next 2 years. Meanwhile, Ford is pulling the plug on expensive EVs, and they want to focus on smaller, more affordable EVs. Kia seems to be doing that as well with the EV3 and 4, if I remember correctly. And Toyota, they're just going to give you the biggest, heaviest, most expensive EVs as possible, seemingly, with the BZ5X, Highlander EV, whatever they call it, the TZ, and even a larger one. How do I feel about it? Well, currently the market is not good for EVs. Plug-in hybrids and hybrids, it keeps growing massively. Interest is at an all-time high for hybrids and plug-in hybrids. And yeah, I think most of you guys would rather have a plug-in hybrid of their existing lineup before we start seeing fully battery electric nameplates. But Toyota, they don't make very many mistakes. Them ramping up BEVs is definitely not short-sighted because, everyone's doing it right now. The governments are mandating it. They're expecting to see EV demand uptick. But at the same time, Toyota has recently said through their president, Ted Ogawa in North America, they will not build EVs for the sake of the government's rules. They will build EVs out to customer demand. And they'll keep making hybrids and other vehicles for customer demand first and foremost. So it's interesting what's going on. Toyota seems to be saying one thing, but on the other end, we're getting more electric EVs. I can't wait to see what you guys can sleuth through down below. If you can figure out, hey, are they going to make a fully electric of the Grand Highlander? And then they'll have a smaller 3-row Highlander coming out as the BZ5X sort of vehicle out of the Kentucky plant. I don't know. It's a big mystery to me. There's going to be so many changes happening for Toyota and pretty much all the other manufacturers, but especially Toyota now, since we have so much more information coming out. I know most of you would rather hear about the next gen RAV4. I made a video at the beginning of the year on the next gen RAV4, so check that out. But we'll know more about that vehicle by the end of this year. Should be fully hybrid with plug-in hybrid, potentially even battery electric versions of that vehicle. But I got to shut it down there. I think I'm more confused now at the end of this video than I was at the beginning, but that's okay. Answers might come to me in the near future, either from secret sources or from official announcements of Toyota or just through private revelation. Maybe I'll just have an answer come to my head that could be accurate of what Toyota's doing with 2 electric 3-row SUVs within a year of each other at 2 different plants here in the United States. I'll see you guys down below. Have a good day. Peace.